Hello students, today we are going to study the first chapter, A Letter to God, from the book First Flight Class 10th. People say faith can move mountains, but what should we put our faith in? This is the question this story delicately poses. Lencho is a farmer who writes a letter to God when his crops are ruined, asking for 100 pesos. Pesos here I would like to clear that pesos is a Latin American currency. Does Lencho's letter reach God? Does God send him the money? Think what your answers to these questions would be and guess how the story continues before we begin to read it. The story starts like this. The house, the only in the entire valley, sat on the crest of a low hill. From this height, one could see the river and the field of ripe corn, dotted with the flowers that always promised a good harvest. The story like this. I would like to explain these lines for you. Lancho was a farmer. His house was the only one in the entire valley. It was on the top of a hill. His fields needed a good harvest. He was looking towards the sky, hoping for a rain. During the meal, big drops of rain began to fall. He went out to feel the rain on his body. Lencho was satisfied. The drops of rain were like the coins. The big drops were 10-cent pieces, and the little ones were worth 5 each. Suddenly, suddenly, a strong wind began to blow. Lencho was worried. Along with the rain came very large hailstorms. They truly did resemble silver coins. The house, the fields, and the hillside were covered with the white hills. Not a leaf remained on the trees. The corn was totally destroyed. So were the flowers. Lencho was sorrowful. Lencho was sad. Lencho was unhappy. Because he was not going to have any corn that year. Lencho thought that there was only one hope. It was the help from God. The following Sunday, he wrote a letter to God. He wrote that if he did not help, if God did not help, his whole family would die. He needed 100 pesos in order to sow his field again and to live until the new crop came. He wrote to God on the envelope, placed a stamp on it, and dropped it into the mailbox. One of the postmen who read the address laughed heartily and took it to the postmaster. The postmaster was quite a friendly and pleasant man. He too broke out laughing, but soon he became serious. He realized that the sender of the letter had a great faith in God. He didn't want to shake the writer's faith in God, so he decided to answer the letter. The generous postmaster collected money from his employees. He himself gave a part of his salary. He put 70 pesos, all the money he could collect, in an envelope and sent it to Lanchos by mail. Lancho's anger against post office employees. Lancho had a firm and unshaken faith in God. When he received the money, he was not surprised, but his happiness was just for some moments. When he counted the money, he was not surprised, but his but when he counted the money, he became angry. He became annoyed. He believed that God could never deceive him. Immediately, he wrote a second letter to God and posted it. The postmaster opened the letter eagerly. Lancho wrote that he received 70 pesos that had been sent by God. He requested God to send him the rest of the money. He asked God not to send the money through the mail. The post office employees were a bunch of crooks. This was the belief of Lencho. Now, once again, we are going to discuss the key points of the story. Students, I tell you the story in a nutshell. Lencho was a farmer, as we know. His house was the only house in the valley and on the top of a hill. The drops of rain was like the coins for him, but his happiness was short-lived as very large hailstones began to fall after the rain. The hailstones destroyed all the leaves on the trees, plants, and flowers. There would be no crop that year. There was a single hope, help from God. This was the only help. This was the only help which he could get. On the following Sunday, he wrote a letter to God. He needed 100 pesos to sow his fields again and to live until the new crop came. He wrote to God on the envelope and put the letter into the mailbox. The postmaster laughed too, but soon he became serious. He decided to reply the letter and help Lancho. He collected 70 pesos only from his employees and himself contributed a part of his salary. He put the money in an envelope and posted it to Lancho. Lancho had an unbeaten, unshaken, unbroken faith in God, and he was not surprised when he received the money. This was the faith of Lancho in God. This was his strong faith. His happiness was turned into anger as there were 30 pesos short of the money. Lancho could never believe that God could ever deceive him, cheat him. So he wrote another letter to God, reminding God that he received only 70 pesos sent by him. He asked God not to send the rest of 30 pesos through the mail as the post office employees were bunch of crooks. They were cheat according to Lencho. In the story we have three important characters and we are going to discuss about these characters. Lencho, the first main, the central figure of this story is Lencho. Lencho was a man of limited means and earned his living by farming his fields. He had an unshaken faith in God. He believed that God always helps the people with a clear conscience, with a clear heart. That's why, when he lost all hopes and he and his family were on the verge of starvation, he looked towards God for help. His deep faith in God even impressed the postmaster who decided to help him. He was a little educated to write a letter. He shows his innocence by trying to have a correspondence with God directly. While he had an unshaken faith in God, he mistrusted easily the motives of man. He could never know, and nor did he ever try to know, who had sent him those 70 pesos to help him. It is quite ironical that he abused his helpers by calling them a bunch of crooks. He never tried to know the reality behind the money. Now, another character, that is the character of postmaster. The postmaster has all that is good in human thinking and behavior. He has a thorough understanding of a sharp, sympathetic, and sensitive mind. He knows how the mind of a God fearing rustic like Lencho works. He doesn't want to break the deep faith of Lencho in God. First, he laughed at the man who wanted to have a direct correspondence with God. After reading the letter, he was deeply moved and impressed by Lencho's faith in God. He knew that merely goodwill was not sufficient. The farmer needed financial help, so he collected a sum of 70 pesos from his employees. He also contributed a part of his salary and sent the money to Lencho. Now, the third character we can discuss, they are the employees of the post office. The post office employees make every effort to help Lencho. They believed that only an innocent and foolish farmer can write a letter to God. They were considerate and full of compassion. They had human heart. They wondered at the faith of the man who wrote that letter, but they contributed something for an act of charity, for an act of help. They couldn't collect 100 pesos but sent only 70 pesos to Lencho. Only a single word was written as a signature: God. Now, students, we shall discuss the comprehension check part. In comprehension check 1, the question the first question is, what did Lencho hope for? I think after the discussion of this story, you are able to answer the questions. What did Lencho hope for? The answer is quite simple. Lencho hoped for rain. Another question is, why did Lencho say the raindrops were like new coins? This is the second question. It was because raindrops would resemble the new coins. The third one, how did the rain change? What happened to Lencho's fields? The rain changed as hailstone began to fall. Lencho's fields were covered with hailstones and the whole crop destroyed. Next question. What were Lencho's feelings when the hail stopped? Here is the fourth question. When the hail stopped, Lencho felt that it was a total loss for him. A plague of locusts would have left more than that year. They would go hungry. Lencho was desperate, hopeless. He passed that night in sorrow. He couldn't sleep. He was lost in thinking. Now come to comprehension check part second, that is here. Who or what did Lencho have faith in? What did he do? Lencho had complete faith in God. The sentences from the text explain his faith. Lencho thought only of one hope, the help of God, whose eyes, as he had been instructed, see everything, what is deep in one's conscience. Next question: who read the letter? The postmaster read the letter. The answer is quite simple. Next is, what did the postmaster do then? The postmaster did not want to break Lencho's faith in God, so he decided to answer the letter and send money to Lencho. Next comprehension check is here. This is oral part, but we should discuss it here, I think. Was Lencho surprised to find a letter from him with money in it? Lencho was not surprised, not least surprised to find a letter from him with money. This was so because his found was so faith in God that he was not surprised. What made him angry? This is the next question. What made him angry? He became angry when he counted the money. Actually, Lencho had demanded 100 pesos, but only 70 pesos reached him. He thought that God could not deny him what he had demanded. Certainly, the post office employees might take the money. So, Lencho was angry. This was the reason of his anger. Now, we are going to discuss the thinking about the text part. The first is, why does Lencho have complete faith in? Which sentences in the story tell you this? So I think, students, you will be able to write the answer of this question. This is quite simple. Now come to the next. Why does the postmaster send money to Lencho? Why does he sign letter to God? The postmaster was a very generous fellow. He was a very kind-hearted fellow. He was a God-fearing person. In order to shake Lencho's faith, not to shake Lencho's faith in God, he collected money from his friends and also gave a big part from his salary. The postmaster signed the letter, God. Lest Lencho should think that the money had not been sent by God. The third question is, did Lencho try to find out who had sent the money to him? Why or why not? Lencho was a simple minded person. He had firm faith in God, so he didn't try to find out who had sent the money. He was of the view that the money was sent by God and none else could do such an act. The last question is, why does Lencho think? Why does Lencho think has taken the rest of the money? What is the irony in the situation? Remember that irony of a situation is an unexpected aspect of it. An ironic situation is strange or amusing because it is the opposite of what is expected. Lencho has thought that the rest of the money has been taken by the post office employees. He believed that God could not send him less money, what he had asked for. Here, one can find the irony that the man has been man has been that the money has been collected and paid by the post office employees. He doesn't believe in them. He calls them bunch of crooks. He calls them cheat. He thinks that 30 pesos have been kept by the post office employees. He has got no idea that even that amount of 70 pesos has been sent by them. And irony is an amusing or a strange situation because we find it quite opposite in nature from what we expect. Here, the post office employees collect and send money to Lencho. He calls them a group of cheats on not receiving the full amount. The next question is, are there people like Lencho in the real world? What kind of a person would you say he is? No, the people like Lenchos are not there in this real world. Lencho is a hard-working farmer. Heavy rain and hailstorm destroys his crops. As a result, the only hope from him in this hour of need is the help of God. He has a firm faith in God. He believes that. Thank you, students. Thank you very much.